We say we want peace, but I don't think most of us really mean it. I mean, not really. Because peace requires a kind of presence that most of us men were never trained to survive. See, peace, I don't think is calm. It's more like a confrontation within ourselves. Stillness isn't really silence. Stillness is more like exposure. And if we strip away the performance and the bravado and the armor and the discipline that we hide behind, we're left with the truth, and that is that stillness scares us far more than war does. See, we know what to do in chaos. We know how to brace. We know how to tighten. We know how to push and grind and sprint and survive. We know how to carry the world when our insides are collapsing. But ask us to sit in a quiet room alone with our own thoughts. Ask us to stop performing. Ask us to meet the parts of ourselves that we've been avoiding for years. And that's, I think, where most of us men break. Because stillness, it removes the distractions that we've depended on. Stillness removes the performance that we've been perfecting. Stillness removes like the noise that we use as camouflage. And when the noise dies, we're left with one question, and that is, who am I when there's nothing left to prove? Most men don't have an answer for this, not because they're weak, but because the world never gave them the tools to look inward without shame. And here's where the myth of masculinity begins to crack. We've been told that strength strength is motion, right? That dominance, reaction, intensity, achievement, these are our ambitions. But the truth is quite opposite. Strength is presence. Strength is steadiness. Strength is the ability to stay with what is real without running from it. And this is the whole foundation of this series, S.I.M.P, right? Strength in Mastered Presence. That's the acronym I've translated it to. It's not the caricature that the manosphere mocks as much, not the insult culture that is often thrown around, but the discipline of a man who has returned to himself instead of outsourcing his worth to chaos. Here at Uber Bintegers, this is exactly what I want to teach. Stillness is not the absence of strength. Stillness is the refinement of it. And presence is not passivity. It's mastery. Integrity doesn't grow in motion. It grows in the quiet where excuses die. Intimacy doesn't really grow in noisiness. It grows in the stillness where we finally become available to ourselves. And when integrity and intimacy come together, when presence deepens instead of fractures, it's there that manhood stops being a performance and now starts being maturity. And here's where the pacing begins to shift. See, stillness isn't weakness. Stillness is what happens when power finally stops panicking. And chaos asks nothing of us emotionally, just reaction. No, stillness demands everything. It demands awareness and honesty and humility and vulnerability and even courage. If all your life you've had to fight to be seen, fight to be respected, fight to just be enough, then the calm feels foreign. The quiet feels suspicious. And peace may feel like a setup. Because war taught you how to function, whereas stillness asks you to feel. And feelings are exactly what so many of us men were trained to fear. Most of us men, we learned safety in motion, right? We learned that busyness meant worthiness and that exhaustion meant progress, that noise meant purpose. And so when life gets quiet, that's when the panic rises. When the grind slows down, uncertainty begins to grow. When we stop moving, the emptiness starts echoing. And we don't know how to hold that sound. We don't know what to do with the ache that appears when the distractions disappear. Stillness terrifies us because stillness requires presence, and presence requires vulnerability. It requires us to look at the pain we've been managing through motion. It requires us to confront the parts of ourselves that we've abandoned while we've been pretending that they didn't really matter. War distracts us, I think. Stillness confronts us. And the confrontation, the real one, like the internal confrontation, is the bravest battle, I think, that we will ever fight. We glorify the grind because it gives us an identity, right? We tell ourselves things like, I'm built for this, right? I don't rest. I stay hustling. I'll sleep when I'm dead. But behind this bravado is fear. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of being ordinary. Fear of being unwanted. Fear of being unneeded. See, the grind hides our insecurity. The noise hides our confusion. The motion hides our loneliness, I think. Stillness strips all of that away. Stillness is the great equalizer. It removes the audience. It removes the applause, the achievements, the trophies, the metrics, the momentum. Stillness leaves us with ourselves. And if we've built our identity on performance, then silence feels a lot like abandonment. And this is why men chase after chaos. Not because they love to fight as much as because they trust it more than the calm. Chaos is familiar, right? It's predictable, it's safe in the sense that it gives us a script, a role, a purpose. The fixer, the savior, the soldier, the grinder, the one who provides, the protector, the one who never breaks, right? These are costumes that we know how to wear so well. And stillness just tears these costumes off. Stillness asks, who are you without the struggle? And most of us men don't really know how to answer. And here's where this truth deepens. See, if you don't choose stillness voluntarily, life will choose it for you. Burnout is not random. It's like an emotional debt that's collecting interest. A breakup, a failure, a lost job, a health scare, a quiet moment lying in bed where something inside says, I can't keep living like this. See, life has a way of pausing us when we refuse to pause ourselves. And in the midst of that pause, all the emotions that we outran will finally catch up. Not to punish us, but to reveal us. Burnout isn't exhaustion. Burnout is what happens when you've been performing strength instead of practicing presence. Burnout is what happens when you've been at war for so long that peace now just feels a lot like danger. And in silence, like the thing that we've been avoiding this whole time, is the only thing that's loud enough to call our truth to the surface. Stillness isn't passive. Stillness is deeply active, but it's inwardly, right? It's not inaction, it's inner action. It's where we stop reacting and start listening. It's where we stop defending and start discerning. Stillness is where we meet our emotions without shame, where we can watch our thoughts without any judgment, where we can learn like the language of our own body instead of overriding it. Stillness is where men can rebuild integrity. Not the moral kind of integrity, but the structural kind. Integrity for me means undivided. And I think most of us are living divided. We're pulled between who we perform and who we actually are. And stillness has this ability to reunite us that way. And this is where the tie to S.I.M.P, or strength in mastered presence, becomes so essential. See, you cannot master presence without first mastering stillness. You cannot grow strength in mastered presence while living in this emotional reactivity. You cannot redefine S.I.M.P unless you redefine first your relationship with silence. Presence is not achieved through dominance. It's built through stillness. And stillness is how a man becomes grounded enough to stop performing and to start inhabiting himself. On my website, I have a course. It's called In the Ashes of the Alpha Male. And this is the work that I want to offer you. It's a course where I want to integrate what this presence looks like. Because emotional mastery isn't something that you sample, I think. It's something that you inhabit. So inside this course, I want to walk you men through unlearning survival mode, like the compulsion to fix, the push to prove something, to earn, to outperform, or to outlast your emptiness. And in this course, I want to help rebuild this emotional capacity through presence, through breath, through grounding, through regulation and honor and alignment. This isn't theoretical. This is what we want to live and embody. And it's the foundation of what strength in mastered presence could look like. So that's on my website, but let's go deeper because stillness will expose still these uncomfortable truths. And men, I don't think really want peace. They want control, right? We women want to feel safe. And peace feels so uncertain. Control feels predictable, while peace just feels exposing. Control will offer us a sense of power, whereas peace feels so much like surrender. But here's a paradox though. The men who cling to control are the ones who are most controlled by fear. The men who avoid stillness, these are the men who need it the most. And the men who resist presence are the ones whose hearts are desperately begging for it. Stillness is not the death of masculinity. Stillness is the detox, if you will. Stillness removes the adrenaline addiction that we've had. Stillness interrupts the performance that we've been in. Stillness pulls the plug on the ego. Stillness, in essence, forces us to feel what we've been outrunning all along. Stillness is where I would say masculinity becomes mature instead of reactive. Grounded, perhaps, instead of chaotic, right? Present instead of performative. Stillness is really the birthplace of S.I.M.P, I would say. Strength in mastered presence. Presence is not something that you achieve by necessarily thinking it into existence. Presence is something you descend into by stopping. And when you stop, you inhale deeply enough to hear your own heartbeat. And then when you exhale, it helps your nervous system when you can sit long enough to realize that the world doesn't really need your panic. It's here that something begins to shift. It's here that you begin to feel the weight of what you've been carrying. And then you can begin to feel the cost of the chaos this whole season. You begin to feel the exhaustion underneath the hustle, right? You begin to feel yourself again. Sometimes maybe for the first time. See, stillness doesn't take things from you. Stillness returns things back to you. It returns clarity and compassion and discernment and direction and connection. See, these are the qualities of a man in mastered presence. A man who carries quiet power. A man who is not moved by noise. A man who leads from steadiness, not necessarily from survival. A man who knows how to breathe through moments that once would have broken him. I would say when a man learns to be still like his entire life, it's then that he recalibrates. He stops confusing motion with meaning. He stops mistaking exhaustion for accomplishment. He starts now noticing instead of reacting. And he starts listening instead of defending. It's now that he can start feeling instead of fleeing. And he becomes accountable instead of avoidance, present instead of of performative. He becomes available instead of being armored. This is what mastered, like strength and mastered presence actually looks like. It's a calm that isn't passive, power that isn't aggressive, masculinity that is not fragile. And here's the most unexpected truth, I would say. The world trusts a still man far more than a strong man. See, strength without presence is threatening, I would say. Strength without presence is like reactive. Strength without presence is unpredictable. But a man who can stay grounded and breathe deeply and remain centered even when life is shaking him, that man now becomes a lighthouse. People relax around him, right? People soften when they're near him. People speak honestly when they're with him. This is the kind of strength that creates safety. And safety is the true currency of intimacy. And this is why stillness is sacred. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of self. And when a man has presence, he no longer needs to validate himself through chaos. He no longer needs to dominate rooms to feel worthy. He no longer needs to control situations just to feel secure. He, he, no, no, he no longer needs to chase noise to avoid the silence that he's in. Stillness is the evidence, if you will, that a man no longer needs to prove his strength because he's finally learned how to be strong. So if you find yourself perhaps addicted to movements and you're afraid of rest and you're uncomfortable in your own quiet, take that as a clue that this is your threshold. This is your doorway, because stillness is not something that you grow into by accident. It's something that you actually choose on purpose. Stillness is not the absence of strength. Stillness is the moment that strength now becomes internal instead of external. And peace doesn't really arrive at the end of the battle. Peace is actually the practice that prevents the battle from even happening in the first place. So peace is not passive. Peace is power that's no longer performing. Peace, like presence, is, I would say, the ultimate masculine flex, if you will. Presence is what separates a reactive man from a responsible man, a chaotic man from one who's grounded, a man who's performative from a man who's truly powerful. Presence is the anchor of S.I.M.P, or strength in mastered presence, S.I.M.P. So it's not submission, it's not weakness, it's not neediness, but presence that has been mastered and calibrated and refined and embodied and disciplined. And the man who learns to be still now becomes the man who carries calm into every room that he enters. He stops waiting for peace to arrive, and he, in essence, brings it with him. In our next episode, episode 20, we're taking this even deeper, because stillness reveals, I think, something else that we men struggle with, and that's receiving love. See, giving is easy, proving it is easy, performing is easy, but receiving or allowing others to love us, letting someone else in, that's where most of us men find collapse. So the next time we're going to be breaking down why being given to feels far more threatening than actually giving, and how receptivity is the next evolution of masculine strength. That's episode 20, the men who never learned how to receive love. I hope you'll join me for that one tomorrow. Thank you for listening in today. Drop me a comment down below. I'd love to hear how this episode resonated with you. Share with me your insights. Talk to you soon.